At the time that I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, I was very into bicycling, road biking, and that was my passion. I was doing races at the time. When I was cured and got back into riding, I had found out about the Bristol-Myers Squibb Tour of Hope. It was basically a cross-country bike ride from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. to raise awareness of participation in clinical trials and cancer research. 26 of us were chosen. And Lance Armstrong was affiliated with it because he was a spokesperson for Bristol-Myers Squibb, so he was the face of this ride. Doing the Tour of Hope gained me a lot of press coverage. I was interviewed alongside Lance Armstrong on CNN. I was in a full-page ad in the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Wall Street Journal. Throughout the interview process while I was applying for the ride, I was never asked where I was treated. In October of 2003, I was contacted by a national magazine to tell my story about how I survived a brain tumor. And once they started interviewing me and I told them that I was treated at the Brzezinski Clinic in Houston, Texas, I didn't hear from them for a couple of weeks. So I contacted them to find out what was going on, and they came back with a story that they decided that they weren't going to run the story, or that they didn't have the funds to run it, or that they would run it at another time, at a later date. And that was basically the end of it. I never heard back from them again. And I inferred from their response that they weren't going to run the story because I was treated at the Brzezinski Clinic.
Chances are you know someone fighting cancer. Well, this story hits home for the staff of this program, which is why talking to Lance Armstrong earlier today was so special. 6 years ago, he knew he was almost as good as dead after testicular cancer spread to his lungs and brain. For the last week, the Tour de France winner led 26 cancer professionals and survivors on a cross-country bike trip that started in Los Angeles and finished in Washington, D.C. today. He, along with his foundation and Bristol-Myers Squibb, are trying to raise hope and awareness about clinical trials. You know, I'd like to believe that someday we're going to look back on current treatments, the chemotherapy and the radiation treatment, and we're going to think that it was so barbaric, such a rough way of treating people with such a serious disease. What do you think has been the biggest medical breakthrough in terms of treating cancer?
Well, certainly it's going to change, and I'm unfortunate to have had an advanced case of testicular cancer, but also very fortunate that it was one of the ones that is arguably the biggest success story in the history of oncology. 20 years ago, my situation would have been, almost completely fatal, and now, in most cases, a young man with advanced testicular cancer has a pretty good chance of living, and if somebody catches it early, then they almost always live. So it's going to change. People won't be treated the same now, or 20 years from now that they are today. But listen, I mean, nobody holds back, and everybody does the best they can for every patient, and every doctor and every researcher and every nurse is totally committed to creating more survivors. But there's no doubt it will change. More targeted therapy, different therapy.
Right, thanks due to a lot of research. You have an amazing story of survival sitting right next to you, a young woman named Jody Gold. Jody, I understand that you actually had a very advanced malignant brain tumor diagnosed right before you turned 32 years old, and here you are with us today.
Exactly, and I'm actually here today because I participated in a clinical trial, which is one of the reasons why I participated in the Bristol-Myers Squibb Tour of Hope, is because I want people to hear my story and to know that I benefited from participation in a clinical trial. And I want to make connections with cancer patients so that they also can benefit from the research that is out there today.
But Jody, my understanding of it, and from personal experience, is that clinical trials usually is the last stop for cancer patients who've already tried the standard treatment and nothing has